I looked her in the eye and I said, Leah, your biggest fans are at home and we love you and we believe in you. And she said, I know, Dad. And we took that selfie, which turned out to be the last photo that I had of my daughter, November 10th, 2022. It was Leah's birthday, and to the left lane, and when he did, a tractor and trailer clipped his Toyota 4Runner. It flipped the 4Runner several times and he was ejected. That's something that will never leave my memory. You know, it was like, here we go again with grief all over again. I have triggers each and every day, whether it's a song, a memory, a photo, whatever the case may be. Those triggers just come out of nowhere. And someone said to me one time, how can you say you're blessed because you've lost your daughter? We've been blessed because we've taken our misery and turned it into mission. Starting February 14th, 2018, that night, I wrote her a love letter, and I have not missed one single day. Every night, I end my night and by writing in a journal a letter to my daughter. Or when Chris passed, I included Chris, and I've not missed one single night. And that's one way that I cope with my grieving, the way that I honor my children.
Welcome back to Mending Piece by Piece podcast. This is the podcast where we hold space for stories of grief, loss, healing, and lifelong journey of learning to live with loss. And in today's episode, it's one of deep heartache, unimaginable love, and enduring strength. And I'm honored to be joined by Michael Straley, a father who has experienced the devastating loss of both his children, his daughter Leah Renee, who died from fentanyl poisoning on Valentine's Day in 2018, and then his son Christopher Scott just 4 short years later on Leah's birthday in 2022. Michael's story is not only a testament to the pain of grief, but also the power of connection, legacy, and resilience. In Leah's memory, he founded Leah's Legacy, which provides a safe support for individuals seeking recovery, which they offer compassionate care for families and individuals on their journey to wellness. And today we'll talk about fatherhood, grief, and what it means to navigate these profound losses as a man in a world that often asks men to stay silent in their pain. Michael's here to share not only his story, but also his heart and his hope for others who are walking through the darkest of valleys. So Michael, thank you for being here and being willing to share yourself as well as Leah and Christopher with us.
Well, thank you, Linda, for the opportunity. Greatly appreciate it.
You're welcome. So can you just start with telling us a little bit about yourself, like who you are, what you do, your family, whatever you want to share, just so we can get to know you a little bit better before we get started.
Oh, sure. My wife is Robin. Robin and I have been married for 38 years. And
Wow.
we live in a small community in South Central PA, right above the Mason-Dixon line, a little town called Greencastle. We're about 75 minutes south of Harrisburg, PA. Just to, paint the picture, we're about 40 minutes west of historic Gettysburg.
Okay.
And I work as the executive director of the Fulton County Medical Center Foundation. We're a small independent rural hospital, and I've been here for 12 and a half years. And my wife is a graphic artist, and she and I met in the newspaper world. She was working at the newspaper, and I was a sports writer at the time, and actually worked in the newspaper business for about 14 years, first as a sports writer, and then I got into the management side. We have both since left the newspaper business, and like I said, she's a graphic artist at a small printing company, and I've worked in higher education, and I transitioned over to the medical center as its chief fundraising executive. My wife and I have been through a lot, and it's a testament to our marriage because it was, a lot of people say that it will separate you as far as, the passing of your children. In our case, it brought us together even more. And she's my best friend, and she will always be my best friend. And together, we've gone through this grief journey.
Thank you for sharing that. And you're right with loss. especially loss of your child, but both your children. I say this to people all the time. It's either going to pull families together or it can rip them apart. And I'm hearing you say that this really has pulled you guys together and made you stronger.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. And you said you've been married 38 years, so right there, that's a lot too.
Yes.
Not many people make it that long, so congratulations on
Oh,
that.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, could you share with us a little bit about your children, Leah and Christopher?
Yeah, Christopher is forever 39. He graduated from Votech as a welder and entered the job force. And he was a very talented young man with his hands. And, he was an outdoorsman to the truest sense. And he loved to hike and he loved to do water sports. He left behind our only grandbaby.
Mm.
And when Chris passed in 2022, Jane was 7 years old at the time. She is now 10. And she lives with her mama in Strasburg, Virginia. And, she's a real trooper. And, I deeply love my son. He brought a lot to the table. He taught me a lot. And, as far as Leah is forever 26. There's 9 years apart between Chris and Leah. And, Leah was just a vibrant young lady who unfortunately struggled with addiction at an early age in her early teens. And it started with marijuana. And from there, it led to harder, more potent drugs.
Mhm.
And, but, Leah was a warrior. She would have her bad days and bad weeks and bad months. But yet she also had her good days and good weeks and good months. And she struggled. And ultimately, on Valentine's Day of 2018, she passed from fentanyl poisoning in Delray Beach, Florida. And
Oh,
it
wow.
was at 9:02 a.m. that I'm sitting in my office where I'm sitting now. And I got the call from downstairs that there were two Pennsylvania State Police officers that wanted to talk with me. And we
Mhm.
met in a private conference room that I no longer go into because it's a trigger.
Oh, yeah.
And I will never go into that room again. When there's a meeting scheduled there, I simply tell the folks, um, if you want me in that meeting, you're going to have to reschedule for another room. Because when you're dealing with um, grief, just like those that are in addiction, there are triggers. And I have
Yeah.
triggers each and every day. And, whether it's a song or a memory or a photo, um, you know, whatever the case may be, those triggers just come out of nowhere. But Leah, like I said, was very vibrant. And, she leaves behind our mission of what we're doing with Leah's Legacy, which was founded in 2019 to honor her.
Yeah. And we're going to talk more about that in a little bit. So I heard you say, we'll talk about Leah for a little bit, that she struggled early on with addiction. And with that, well, I'm not sure. I'm just going to share this right now. I'm not sure if you know that I lost my youngest brother to addiction, to fentanyl poisoning as well. And he struggled pretty much all his life. So I can relate to that. And I was wondering, with her struggling, how that was for you as a family, and was she able to get treatment and what was that like?
Yeah, it was a struggle. I mean, it was an ongoing battle. It's a situation where we, we, what we learned early on was we cannot force someone to get treatment. They've got to want it. And in Leah's case, she wanted it. And at
Oh,
the age
good.
of 17 and a half, she entered her first detox center. But that didn't go very well because we as parents were very naive. And you got to understand, this was back in 2009, where there, really wasn't a lot of treatment options available. So we
Hmm.
went to a local agency near our hometown, and it was $14,000 out of pocket for 2 weeks.
Oh my.
And so we had to tap into our savings, and my mom and dad said, we'll split the cost with you. And I'll never forget that my wife and I were walking out into the parking lot after she had checked herself in, because it was a 2-week inpatient stay. And Robin looked at me and she said, "Well, I'm glad this will be over in 2 weeks," meaning Leah's addiction. And, we were naive as parents because it wasn't
Yeah.
the beginning of the end. It was really the beginning of the beginning. And after 2 weeks, she came back home and it was the same vicious cycle, making the same phone calls, meeting the same people. And so this just repeated itself. Um, but she was in 14 different detox
Oh.
centers, and she went to various sober living homes from North Carolina, throughout the state of Pennsylvania, 3 stints in California. Actually, those stints in California were her best days and weeks, because at the time,
Mm.
California was ahead of the curve when it came to treatment. And again, this was back in 2009. And so the West Coast had a lot more to offer than the East Coast in terms of treatment. And but then ultimately she returned to the East Coast, and was in the Lancaster, PA area for treatment. And then she decided that when she did come home, she was at a state uh, institution, state run program, because she was 26 years old and she was off our insurance. And state insurance is a lot different. And that lasted maybe 3 days because the place was just a crud hole. And she wanted to come back home. But when she came back home, she announced that her friend, who she had met out in California, had invited her to come to Florida. And as her dad, I had a knot in my stomach. I did not want her to go.
Mm.
I said, "Well, when are you leaving?" And she said, "Tomorrow." And that was February 10th.
Oh.
And so my dad's still living. He's 90 years old. He's been battling dementia for the last 8 years, 9 years. But he rode along with me, and which was unheard of. And I guess there was a reason. But we dropped her off at the airport, and she saw that I was still standing there. And because the airport police hadn't shooed me away or anything. And so she came back over, and I gave her, a hug and a kiss, and I put my hands on her shoulders like I had done many times before. And I looked her in the eye and I said, "Leah, your biggest fans are at home, and we love you and we believe in you."
Mm.
And she said, "I know, Dad." And we took that selfie, which turned out to be the last photo that I had of my daughter. And I said, "Well, what about a photo for, your pap Rick?" And so she leaned in the window, and I snapped that picture. And my dad is a man of few words, and he's always been a man of few words, but he looked over at me, and there was one solemn tear rolling down his left cheek. And he
Uh,
looked at me and he issued the following words. And he said, "Do you think we'll ever see her again?" And I said, "Well, Dad, why wouldn't we?" And his voice trailed off and he didn't say any more. Well, that was
mm.
prophetic, um, because 4 days later, I got that call at 9:02 a.m., where she had passed from fentanyl poisoning earlier that morning.
Wow. That's just a lot to I'm just processing everything you said. That's a lot. I mean, and it's common, and you probably know that now as you're into this, how many stints it'll take people. And that's part of, I mean, between the drug and alcohol and mental health system, it needs a whole
Yes.
revamp. But I forget where I heard it, and I wish I could remember. I'm pretty sure it was like a good year. It said it takes like a good year of real treatment for people, if they're really going to be able to break an addiction, to be able to break it. And yet we're lucky if I heard you say 3 days, 2 weeks, maybe you get 30 days. It's not much, not much. And then you're out. Like
Yeah.
that's, that's not helping.
Well, it's a good point, Linda, because her longest stint was 6 months, and it was actually in California.
Mm,
And then there was a
okay.
trigger. There was a trigger for her out there, and it started the vicious cycle all over again.
Yeah. Well, one of the things when I was in grad school, I knew I wanted to have a private practice, and I thought I wanted to work with people in addiction. So at the same time, when I was in grad school, I was studying to get my CAC, addiction counselor certification. So I was taking classes that they offered at night and on the weekends. And I learned so much. But then when I graduated, and then I got a full-time job doing one thing, but then on the weekends and like some nights I worked in a detox center. Quickly learned two things. One, that's not two. One, I was not ready for that. I had a lot of my own work to do. People were sharing and they're coming right at me. And I was seeing different family members because my entire family had addiction issues. So I realized I have to get my own stuff in line before I can really do this kind of work. So I was able to step away where I know other people won't recognize that. But number two, and probably one of the most important things that I recognized, is that I was coming from like a therapeutic, like I guess mental health model as well, and was trying to teach people like the cognitive model. Here's your situation, here's your thoughts, your emotions, your body sensation. What activates you? What are these things? But also trying to, what do you notice? How do you think about it? So many people would get so angry with me because that's not what they wanted to talk about. They wanted to share war stories and whatever. And I remember one guy saying, you know, you know what? You all should sit down and stop yelling at her because maybe she has something to say because she didn't go through what we're going through. So maybe she has it right. But because I didn't go through addiction like that. But I remember being like, nobody was teaching that. Like, how are you going to help people if you're not helping the mental health part of it too?
Right.
Like, it was really eye-opening. I don't know where they're at today, but well, why do you think, I'm just curious, you don't have to talk a lot, but why do you think California was ahead of the game as opposed to around here?
Well, they were always on the progressive side out there. I mean, obviously, with substance use disorders and whatnot, there were a lot more facilities out there than there were back east. And so, I mean, actually, when we had the opportunity to send her out there, my wife accompanied her. And that lasted, she was on the trip and she flew out with her and she went to the detox center, which was on a mountaintop. And then actually near the end of her detox, there were sober living homes coming in and recruiting, which,
Oh,
you didn't hear about over, back east.
mm-mm.
And so, there would be like one or two sober living homes that come in and, would give the residents a pitch on, the importance of coming to their sober living home. And so she chose, the one that was in Hollywood Hills.
Why
And
not?
yeah, and like I said, they were just, way ahead of the curve at the time, in terms of treatment and facilities and the number of facilities and things like that. So, that's the
Yeah.
reason why I think, that happened. And to their credit, I mean, she did really well out there. She did. And she actually had a chance to stay out there. She was offered the assistant house manager's position, but she hadn't driven in over 3 years. And one of the responsibilities was to drive a 15
Uh,
passenger van in downtown LA. And she did not want to risk the lives of her cohorts because she
mm-hmm.
hadn't driven. And it's not like, driving in a small rural
Yeah.
community or even a small city. We're talking about LA. And
Yeah.
I remember she called and she's like, Mom and Dad, I can't do this. I really want to stay, but I can't do this because that particular sober living home did everything together. They went grocery shopping together. They had
Mm,
outings together. They went to meetings together. And that's where she really thrived when everything was done together versus being on your own.
yeah.
And but unfortunately, that was part of the responsibility, and she couldn't honor that responsibility, and so she just decided that she couldn't take that. And then the cost was rising and rising, and we were helping, but at the same time, it just got out of control, and she just decided to return back east. So
Yeah. So with the sober living and what you said they did everything together, I think that's another key is when we're talking connection.
yes,
You're with people who get it and they're giving you, I mean, it can also be a weakness, but a lot of them are in it and they're really trying to do their best and they understand each other. So they're also going to call you right out on what you're doing. They're going to call you out on your BS, right?
right,
And I
yeah, they
think that
will.
That's helpful. There was one place, and for the life of me, I think they either were bought out or changed their name, but it was after I lost my brother Michael to fentanyl. And we went to a vigil, overdose awareness vigil, and it was in New Jersey. And this man got up and he spoke, and he was talking about New Jersey and like what's going on there and about the sober living and these recovery centers. And I'm like, they are way ahead of the game than we are. So I had contacted him. Now, this is 11 years ago because it was right after my brother passed away. And I got their information, and they really did have something that they didn't have around here. And it was mostly for people under 26.
Mm.
And they offered them the treatment, the detox, and it might not be here. It may be in California, it may be in Colorado, maybe in Florida. They had connections with all these places. But what they did offer was once you went through all that, and if they wanted, and they had extended stay, so people could be there 6-9 months. It wasn't like that 2-week
Right.
stint and you're out. You could then come back to, they had a place, it was hooked up with Rutgers University. So you would live in one of their sober living housing. You could enroll in Rutgers, but you had to be under 26. So you could go to school, and it was, everything was covered. You had certain responsibilities, maybe a part-time job or something like that. That was amazing. And I had one person that had referred there. Well, two. One went through some of the stuff, had to go out somewhere else and did the treatment, came back. And again, like you said, there was something, a trigger, and that something that activated right back in it again. I was never able to stay clean long enough to get into that program. I think they were able to start it, if I can remember, and then relapse, but they don't give up on you. But then I went to go find them maybe like 5 years ago, and I can't find anything.
Yeah, unfortunately, there are quite a few that are, they either went bankrupt or they're bought out, and then it's just passed over, one to another, to another, to another. And unfortunately, that happens, especially it seems like with the bigger chains, and, for one reason or another, they just don't survive.
Yeah, I think that was it. I think it was bought out. And then when things are bought out, a lot of times it's money,
Right.
and it's not about let's really try to help. Maybe there's a little of that, but I think it
Right.
gets lost somewhere.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So with Leah, and then 4 years later, then you lost Christopher. You shared a little bit about how you responded when you just found out about Leah, but were the losses, obviously they were different, but to you and how you felt and how you responded, were they different?
Well, we had already been down the grief journey, but you really never get used to it.
Mm-hmm.
And we were just devastated. It was the morning of November 10th, 2022, and I was planning on working a half a day here for obvious reasons because it was Leah's birthday, and um, I just wasn't feeling up to it, and I was getting ready to leave work. I was working on a project, and my wife typically will text me at work, but when she calls, it's usually not a good thing.
Yeah.
And my phone rang, and it was late in the morning, and her words were simply, "Mike, I have to go to Winchester Medical Center. Chris has been in an accident. I don't know the details." Click. And from where I live, or from where I work to Winchester, Virginia, is like a good 2 hours and 20 minutes.
Oh,
And so, in the car I go, and all kinds of emotions are running through, because when Leah had passed, I had told the police officers, I said, I need to get to Hagerstown, Maryland to inform my wife. And from where I work to Hagerstown is an hour. And 20 minutes into the drive, that particular time, I had run out of paper napkins from crying. And so, here we are with Chris, and that's a 2 hour and 20-minute ride. And I just felt the same emotions all over again because I didn't know his status. And when I got to the hospital, I think Robin had texted me and said, we're upstairs, because originally he was brought into the ER. and I actually was headed to the ER. And when I went to the ER, I had asked for Christopher, and the one security guard said, "Your family's upstairs." Well, I didn't know where he was taking me. He said, I'll take you up. And it was to the ICU trauma unit. And when I walked into the room, Robin and Chris's girlfriend um, were just in sheer tears. And Chris was laying in the bed, and it did not look like he had his head wrapped, but there was no signs of outward injuries. But he had already passed.
Oh.
He was clipped by a tractor and trailer on Interstate 81. No fault of his own. There was a car, 3 cars in front of him that had almost come to a complete stop for whatever reason. And the 2 vehicles in front of him veered over to the right shoulder. But there was a Virginia Department of Transportation vehicle already assisting a disabled motorist, which did not allow Chris to get over onto the right shoulder. And he had to make a split-second decision to go into the left lane. And when he did, a tractor and trailer clipped his Toyota 4Runner, and it flipped the 4Runner several times, and he was ejected. And so Robin and I decided that he would like for us to have him be an organ donor, to give life to others. And that's what he did. But we had to sit by his bedside for 4 days and hold his hand while they assembled the teams from 4 different states, because those teams come in concurrently, and when they do their thing. And, it's not like there's like an hour wait between one team to the other. So we had to wait. And
Oh my
that
gosh.
was excruciating. Hour after hour, day after day. And the hospital and the folks down there were wonderful. But it's really difficult to sit by your son's bedside and hold his hand, knowing that he had already passed. And so, we did that. But, on top of that difficulty, the folks said, when it's time to take him out of his room, there's going to be an honor walk. And we had no idea what the honor walk was. And I should have asked, but that's where all the clinical workers line the halls. And they put their heads down. And as the hospital bed is going down the hall, and we were behind him along with our pastor. And that was very, very difficult for Robin and I. It was a long hallway, and then we got into the elevator, and then we got out of the elevator and had to go down another long hallway, and that hallway was lined. And then when it was time to say goodbye, um, that's something that will never leave my memory. And, it was like, here we go again, with grief all over again. And we went from a family of 4 to my wife and I.
Yeah. I just want to just pause. That's just a lot. And just want you to take a deep breath.
That's what I'm doing right now.
Yeah. Because I know this is hard, even talking about it. And again, I appreciate you sharing. And just for me hearing it, it's a lot. So I can't imagine having to live through it and walk through it. And I've seen just that walk that you talked about. I never heard of it. And then I started seeing on social media, on TikTok or something, some videos. And I'm like, what are these? And, once you watch one, that you'll see a bunch now on your feed. And watching the parents behind them, I'm just like, every time I'm like, of course I cry every time. And I'm like, I don't know how they're doing it, but you just do it.
Well, he extended life to 4 other folks.
Yeah.
1 in DC, 1 in Virginia, 1 in Maryland, and 1 in, I believe, New York.
Wow.
And we're just crossing our fingers that one of these days we hear from them. That's been the toughest part. One of the toughest parts, especially for my wife. She would just love to have one of those folks reach out to us. Um, but there's no guarantee with that. And we were told that up front. And she's reached out, to the folks that do that. And they've been very, very nice and cordial. And they've communicated with the folks that have received extended life. And we're just hoping and praying that one of these days we either get a letter or a knock on the door. But I know it's, we're told that it's very difficult for those folks as well. And,
Yeah.
but we would just, love to hear from at least one of them.
So is that how it works? Like you might write a letter yourself and then they have it to know that we're open to that if they were to reach out. So the people that received it would have to reach out.
Yeah, it goes through a third party. It goes through the
Okay.
organization. You cannot write um, the
Directly.
yeah. You cannot with the organ receiver. You cannot write them directly. You've got to go through the organization, and then they vet it, and then they pass it on.
Yeah. Okay. I had thought that. I mean, to be ignorant, I mean, I saw it in a movie and that's it. I don't know anything else about it.
Yeah,
But that's one way that you were able to see his life, and part of him is living on through others, and not just one, but for other people.
yeah. My wife,
That's beautiful.
my thank you, and my wife jokes that um, the person that received his heart, look out. Because he had a heart of gold, and he
Wow.
was always on the go, and he was an outdoorsman to the nth degree. And that person that got that heart, they they are probably full of vim and vigor.
Wow. That's neat. That's a cool way to look at that. And I often wonder, I would think that they would feel something like that. Like they would,
Mhm.
because that's DNA. That's like part of someone else. You would take on. Like, I don't want to say they're characteristic, but there's something about them that would be different.
Yeah, I would
That's
think so.
somebody else's, but I'm not a scientist, so I don't know.
Right.
So definitely what I heard you say about the initial response was one of shock. And you said with Chris, or here we go again. And what for people that are going to be listening, maybe they don't realize is that now you have this one, you lost your daughter. So then if you have a second loss, it just compounds. And it's like you are not that you ever stopped grieving, nor will you,
Right.
but it's now, it just, it's amplified. I don't want to say it's doubled because that's not true. It's just amplified
Yeah.
and brings up all, you know, it's just different.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. And it doesn't go away.
Yeah.
And each day I talk to my kids, and on my way to work in the morning, I share something, and I end my day. When Leah passed, starting February 14th, 2018, that night, I wrote her a love letter, and I have not missed one single day. Every
Oh,
night, I end my night, and by writing in a journal a letter to my daughter. And then when Leah passed, or when Chris passed, I included obviously Chris. And so every night, and I've not missed one single night. Um, and some nights it's more directed to Leah. Some nights it's more directed to Chris.
hmm,
Some nights it's directed to both of them. Like tonight, I will talk to them about what we're doing here, and it'll be a letter to both of them. And that's one way that I cope with my grieving. It's one
yeah,
way that I, honor my children.
yeah. And it's a beautiful way. And something I actually talked about last weekend where we met is continuing the bonds. And in our society around grief, there's so much like, all right, you had your funeral time, or it's been 6 months. Aren't you over that yet? Kind of thinking. And I say that sarcastically, obviously, but one of the things that people don't realize, it's called continuum bond theory. It's an actual theory, and it's been shown that when we're able to do what you just said, you're continuing those bonds by talking to them, writing letters, doing stuff in their honor. That's healthy for us. That's what healthy grieving looks like. When other people are uncomfortable when we do things like that or talk about it, but they got it backwards, because in other societies, in like Western cultures or Eastern cultures, we're Western, like they do this all the time. There's lots of cultures that have these bonds that they continue, and it's accepted by the whole culture.
Mm-hmm.
It's just here, it's not. And I'm glad that you shared that, because I think that's important, especially as a male, because we all grieve differently. We all grieve differently. Men and women grieve differently. But
Yes.
what's it been like for you as a father, as a man in a society that doesn't appreciate or give men the chance or permission to be vulnerable, to grieve, to share emotion? What's it been like for you?
Well, it's a very good question. I'm a little bit different.
Okay.
I don't have this macho ego, uh, not afraid to cry mindset. I'm an only child, and maybe that has something to do with it. But my mom and dad, blue collar workers, and they always allowed me to express my emotions, whatever those emotions were. And
Yeah, that's
I've always
important.
been a sentimental type of a person, and you know, I let it out. And believe me, I've cried a river, and I continue. Um, and so, I got to share this. When Leah passed, Robin, my wife, was never into grief counseling. I went to grief counseling. She didn't. Um, I went to the bereavement conference last week. She didn't. We, like you said, we all grieve differently.
Yeah.
She does not do those things, and I'll talk a little bit about how she grieves. Um, but one of the outlets that she found early on was there was a sober living home in nearby Hagerstown, Maryland, that was literally being built, and we knew those folks. And they said early on that one of the things that they wanted once they got it up and running, and the ladies, it was a sober living home for women. They were going to have a social enterprise, and one of the social enterprises um, was to make chocolate. And so she was one of the original 4 or 5 ladies. The house wasn't even built yet, but they would go to the community centers. They would go to the various homes of the other ladies, and they would make the chocolate. It was in its infancy, but they would make the chocolate, and they would do taste testing of the chocolate and taste testing and decide what they wanted to do. Well, every Saturday morning, she got up and she would make her way over there, and she wouldn't come back until about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Well, that left me at home alone, and I really resented that.
Mm.
And because I was left at home, you know, not looking for a pity party, but I was grieving and I was hurting, and I was in a place that I don't wish on anyone. And I'm staring at the walls, and sometimes silence can be deafening. And when she would come home, she wanted to talk about what she did. And I just sat there. And like I said, Robin's my best friend. But when I sat there, it was boiling up inside me. And so fast forward a couple months where I was awakened one night at about 3 o'clock in the morning. And for some reason, I would get awake at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I didn't know why until we received Leah's death certificate. And her estimated time of death was at 3 a.m. And so the one morning, and being a former writer, and well, I should say former writer, because once you're a writer, you're always a writer, but I wanted to do something. And by this time, we were just cobbling together Leah's foundation. But I wrote a book. But anyway, at 3 a.m. the one morning, it was in January, a year later, it was near the 1 year anniversary of Leah's passing. I got awake at 3 a.m. and the name of the book was given to me. It's called The Calling. And honestly, the chapters were outlined for me. And all I had to do was fill in the chapters. So I got up that one morning. It was a Tuesday or Wednesday morning, and I got up and I wrote down what had been given to me. And then those Saturday mornings, when Robin would rush off to do the chocolate, I would sit and I would write my chapters. And over a span of 2 months, I wrote the book, The Calling. And the reason the title was given to me was obviously the call at 9:02 a.m. and then making it an action verb. The ing part was what we're doing. And so that's where I channeled my grief. And then the house was almost built. And she came back to me and she's like, you really need to join me one Saturday just to check out what we do. Well, I didn't know any of those ladies.
Mm-hmm.
And I walked in. And when I walked in, they all came over to me and they're like, "Hey, Mr. Mike, so nice to meet you." And they made me feel a part of them. And I'm telling you, that lifted my spirit so much. And, it was really a combination. And I would tell the guys out there that's listening to this, do not be afraid to channel your emotions. Do not hold it in, because it can eat you alive and it will make you do things that you do not want to do. I shared the story at the bereavement conference that self-care is so important. And I had to learn that lesson the hard way, because I had lost about 27 pounds after Leah's passing. My wife and I didn't turn the TV on for about 2 or 3 months. We were off social media, which that wasn't a bad thing, but we didn't want to hear anyone. We didn't want to see anyone at the door. We didn't want to take phone calls. We just wanted to become hermits.
Yeah.
And, I let myself go. And of course, I took a leave of absence from work, and the folks here were wonderful about that. And, but like I said, self care is so important. And then the second time around with Chris's passing, I learned that, again, a friend of mine reminded me about self care. And that is so vitally important. And again, for the guys that are listening to this, channel your emotions in a positive way. I know that there can be bitterness, there can be a lot of strife, there can be disagreements with your spouse, but just understand that your spouse is also going through the same grief. And to your point, Linda, we all grieve differently. And, it's a situation where just try to work with one another. But please, please do not hold it in, because that resentment can really, really turn into ugliness, and it can turn into something that you don't want to have happen.
Did it turn into something you didn't want to happen? Or was
It
it
could have.
close?
It could have.
Okay.
It could have. It could have. But, someone said to me last week at the conference, um, as far as, they asked me after I spoke, how was your faith? Did you draw closer or did you draw further apart? And I said it actually drew us closer. Robin and I hadn't been in church for, months and months and months, because we were angry. We were angry at God that he was letting this happen to Leah. And then when it happened, it was like, okay, do we strike out? Strike out against God or what? And I give Robin credit. She's like, you know what, Mike? I think we need to get back into church. And so we did. And our pastor was a young gun, great guy, 40 some years old. And he was right there with us, walking beside us. And I tell you what, he offered words of encouragement that, quite frankly, I don't know if any other pastor could have. And, I give him a lot of credit.
Yeah.
And he's now chairman of our Leah Legacy Foundation.
That's awesome. So if you notice, I looked down it. I'm keeping notes. So with that little bit that you just shared, I can go in many directions. So I'm gonna try to keep it brief, but I don't even know what one to ask you first. So I'm gonna go back to the beginning, and then did you ever talk to your wife about that resentment that you were being left alone?
Yep.
Did you talk to her after you went to do the chocolate with her or before it?
Before
Okay, good. I was just
she
curious.
noticed a change in my demeanor about the second or third time that she went over there on a second or third consecutive Saturday. And when she came back, she noticed my demeanor. And I said, I just got to get something off my chest. And I unloaded. I mean, it wasn't in a,
It
uh,
wasn't pretty.
no, well, it wasn't pretty, but it wasn't in a combative way.
Yeah.
I just, talked with her and said, look, I'm here by myself and I don't know what to do. I've got all kinds of thoughts running through my head and I don't know what to do. And you're gone from like 8:30 in the morning until 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And that's a heck of a lot of time for me to do whatever. And I don't feel like going outside and doing, spring yard work. I don't feel like doing that. But yet here I sit twiddling my thumbs and you're out about doing chocolate. And I'm not jealous of that. But at the same time, I'm here alone.
Yeah.
And I think, that's when that title of the book was given to me and that kept me busy then. I mean, on that
Yeah.
Saturday morning, she was out the door and I was over there on my iPad.
Yeah. So I appreciate that. One, open, you are really sharing, and I really appreciate that. And what I find interesting, I also have two books, two workbooks and journals to help people through grief so they understand. In the very beginning, I guess chapter 2 or something, talks about different styles of grief, intuitive and instrumental, and then blended. So one is a lot of times stereotyped as male grief, female grief, but actually you just described where the roles were reversed in a way. And if you go to support groups or conferences or etc. around grief, bereavement, more men or more females, or is it equal? You tell me. What do you say?
I see men that really don't know how to channel their grief. And I picked up a little bit on that last week. The one gentleman who was there to do a workshop, he actually talked about the differences between men and women. And there were surprisingly some women in that workshop, which was great because they offered a different perspective. But they're the ones that really spoke up, and the men didn't. I
But
did.
were there more? That's probably why I went right up to you to talk to you. Uh, were there? Do you usually see a lot of men? Do you think it's equal, men and women in the same spot, like at groups or conferences? No,
No, it's more women.
exactly.
Yes.
And something you just said. So women will speak up and they will talk. And sometimes men have something to say. You said about your father, man, a few words, but when he has them, they're like profound. You got
Yeah.
to listen, right? It's the same thing, but what happens as women, we just keep cackling sometimes. We just keep talking and we miss it, and that's part of why I want to talk with more men, because you have feelings, you're going through the same stuff. You may do it different. We all do it different. Doesn't matter that we had that relationship was your daughter, but your relationships were different. You're made up differently. Your wife's made up differently. So you're going to grieve differently.
Yeah.
That's important to know. And also, like you said, don't bottle up these feelings. You have feelings, find a way to let them out. Now, your wife liked to do things action oriented. She was going to right there. You did both, actually. You'll speak it and you're emotional. You said, I'm not afraid to cry. I'm not afraid to talk about my feelings, which we need to get out. You need to, but you also found a way to pour it into the writing, right?
Yeah.
And so,
Well, men, I think men just in general, and I'm just making a general statement here. I think men overall just think that that's a sign of weakness, and it's not.
say that again. And it's
I
what?
think men think it's a sign of weakness by expressing their feelings. Well, I can't do that. It is not.
Thank you. You're right. It's not. It's not a sign of weakness. These are feelings. Feelings are feelings. There's no weakness about it. It's how we're made up. And actually, there's research behind it that says men actually feel more intensely. They feel more physiologically than women do.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's the truth, and you didn't grow up that way, which is great. Your parents were like, feel your feelings. But if you're in a society, or you grow up with suck it up,
Right.
boys don't cry,
Right.
you're fighting something that like is not making sense to your body.
Right.
So
Exactly.
yeah, so we could talk about that forever, but I want to go back to you waking up at 3 a.m. and then getting the name of the book, The Calling. And you said you got right to writing, and I had a similar experience. So that's interesting. So would you say, was that a God moment? Do you feel like God was telling you, this is what I want you to do? Or would you just say, oh, I woke up with the calling?
No, it was a God moment.
Okay. Yeah.
It was a God moment, just like how we started the foundation. And there's a wonderful backstory to that. And I talk about it in the book, but I can, share a little bit there.
Yeah.
As far as, Leah had received in Lancaster in the Ephrata area when she was at the sober living home, December of 2017. There was a church group that came in with nicely wrapped presents. And except there was one present that was in a garbage bag. And Leah was the type that would stand back and let all of her peers go before her. And so that was the case that day. So they all grabbed up the nicely wrapped
Nice
presents.
ones.
Well, there was this garbage bag. Well, Leah hit the mother lode, so to speak, because inside the garbage bag was a nice designer purse. And inside the purse, there were all kinds of gift cards and there were all kinds of essentials that we take for granted: toothpaste, toothbrush, chapstick, hairbrush, hair comb, so on and so forth. And she called us that Sunday afternoon, and it was like one big run on sentence. She was so excited about everything that she had received. Well, we were supposed to meet Leah on March 1 in Florida. I had a speaking engagement in Florida, and then we were going to West Palm Beach to take in some spring training games of my favorite baseball team. And Delray Beach was literally 20 minutes up the coast. And so before Leah left, I said, Leah, your homework assignment is to pick out a nice restaurant while you're down there. And then your mom and I will come over on March 1 and pick you up and we'll go out to dinner. Well, instead, we had her memorial service at our home church in Hagerstown, Maryland. And that was on a Thursday evening, March 1. And that Sunday, 3 days later, Robin and I were back in church, and halfway through the service, this hand appears over my left shoulder with a card. And on the card, it said, "Be a voice." And I turned around and it was our good friend Linda. And she smiled at me and nodded and winked like I was supposed to know what those words meant, only I didn't. But I kept.
Wait, hold on. Did she tell you anything?
No.
Or she just handed you that card?
That hand came over my shoulder with this card. It said, "Be a voice."
And you didn't ask her after church?
Nope. I kept it. I kept it.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I kept it, and I put it in our walk-in closet. And I looked at it every morning, looked at it every evening, and prayed on it. And 2-3 months had passed, and I'm on my way home from work, and I'm coming through this little community, and all of a sudden, this voice wasn't a loud, audible voice, but this voice said, "Recreate the bag," because Robin and I were wrestling with what to do to honor Leah, what to do. And like I said, the voice said, and sometimes when I'm driving by myself, I talk to myself out loud, and I said in a question form, "Recreate the bag." And the voice came back again and said, "Recreate the bag." And and I pulled over, and I again, as a guy, I was overcome by emotion because I knew right then and there that card, "Be a voice,"
Be the voice,
and "Recreate the bag." And I got so excited, and I came home and I shared it with Robin, and I said, "The bag that Leah had received?" She said, "Yes." I said, only it's not going to be a garbage bag. It's going to be a purple reusable drawstring bag. Purple because it was her favorite color, and also purple is the color of overdose awareness. And we got our minds together and we cobbled together a list of things that we had heard from Leah that she had received. And then we ad-libbed, we just added to that list. And when I showed that bag and shared that bag at the conference last week, that bag is, 35 to 40 items with essentials and fun things, journals, colored pencils, but a lot of essentials, because when men and women go into sober living homes, sometimes what they have is literally what they have on their backs.
Yeah.
And so that's how Leah's Legacy Foundation was created. But you know what? Now we have the Leah Legacy Operations Center on our family property, which houses all the product. Because, as I shared before, Robin, we cobbled together a letter then, and we sent it out to our family and friends and told them what we were going to do and could they help us financially. And we got $1,200 back, and that was the start. And so Robin ordered in bulk, and all the bags are the same. But the only problem was, it wasn't a problem, but she kept ordering things, and things kept showing up at our house, and we ran out of space. And so we live beside my mom and dad, and we have some property there. And my mom's like, hey, if you need to build a building, we'll just build it on the property there. And so it's the Leah Legacy Operations Center. And if you were to go in there today, you will see that card to be a voice. It's framed.
I was going to ask you, is it framed? Yeah.
It's framed, and it's my inspiration, Linda. And I tell you, there's not one time, honest to goodness, there's not one time that I do not go in and out of there that I don't look at that card. I look at that card because that is my inspiration. And then right underneath that card, there's a tote board. And every purple bag that has gone out and shared with women in recovery, we count it. And if you were to walk in there today, you would see the number 1208. 1,208 purple bags have been shared with women in recovery in throughout the state of Pennsylvania, over in the Maryland, West Virginia. And that was really, the start of Leah's legacy.
I love it. If you see me doing this, I kept getting goosebumps when you were talking. Seriously. When you were talking about in the car, I mean, that's the Holy Spirit talking to you. Like, and yeah, it might not have been like, Michael.
Like no, it wasn't like that.
Like, you hear like Moses might have heard. It's not like that.
No, it wasn't like that.
Right. But it's something that you can't deny, and you felt it physically, emotionally, especially when you said that, like the emotions overcome, like that's, and you're following God's calling. So like, this is a way, an outlet that you've found, writing, like to your children, talking to your children, even looking at that card that you have now framed. That's a connection. Like, you're continuing these bonds. These are tools. And you also said, I'm going to, I went to grief counseling, I do it in the conferences, and sharing this story is another way that's helping you. But it's also, you're giving hope. You have turned your pain, still in pain. That's not going away, but you're finding a purpose in it.
Yes.
Yeah. And helping so many. And I think I was getting the chills because when you said about the trash bag, one of the things that we did when my kids were little, we live right outside of Philly, and how can you give back to others? And, you could buy a present and give it to an organization, but we're trying to find some other ways to help the kids understand things. And it's important to give back. And a girlfriend of mine, my best friend, used to feed the homeless out of the back of her pickup truck. Well, someone else's truck. And she cooked the meals and would do it. And I did it one Christmas with her because I was in counseling and grew up in a very dysfunctional family. And holidays were just stressful. And I was like, I hate holidays. So the counselor told me I needed to find something positive to do. And I was like, That's how I was, like, "What?" Um, and I asked her, "Can I go with you?" It changed my life. It changed my life. She literally gave the coat off her back, and it was cold, to somebody. These people are homeless, mental health issues, drug issues, and most of them walked around with trash bags, and that's all they had.
Yeah.
So, long story short is we started doing that with our kids when they were young, and we would do it on Christmas Day, cook the meals, ham, turkey, mashed potatoes, brownies, out the back of her van, and like give them water. And the
Yeah.
kids were little, like should be home playing with their toys. And they were like, "Mom," they didn't even understand. My daughter, we drove past the train and she goes, "Is that where we're going? Where the hobos are?" And I'm like, "Don't say that." Like
Yeah.
they didn't know.
Yeah.
But the people couldn't believe it. And they were like, the kids didn't have to leave the van. Like they just from the, back seat were hand things. The
Mhm.
kids got something out of it, the people did. And I'm like, that's a hot meal that they
Yeah.
can get. And it's giving them a little bit of hope. And then we started collecting. We'd ask people, we're going to go out. We're going to do this. And we did it through the winter too. We started getting little suitcases, little bags, like people that throw out because like that trash bag, like to carry all your belongings in it. And like, so that's, I love that you're doing that. And you don't happen to have a bag with you, do you?
I don't.
Well, I'm going to ask you for pictures and we'll have them
Okay.
throughout this because I'm pretty sure it says Leah's Legacy, right?
Yeah, it
On it.
does. Yeah, it
And
does.
is there a little story? Do you put anything in it to,
Yeah, we have a little brochure. There's
okay.
a picture here of a lady
Oh, there you go.
with the
Move it over.
bags.
Yes, I see it. Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So beautiful. Wow.
But
And
that's
go
just
ahead.
really the start. Now we have Leah's Gathering Place, which is a home on the other side of my parents, which was really my aunt and uncle's house. And my uncle had passed away 16 years ago, and my aunt unexpectedly passed away um, in the summer of 2021. And I had a conversation with my cousin actually in the spring of 2021 about securing that property after my Aunt Betty had passed. And unbeknownst to any of us, and she was in her late 80s, but she wound up passing 3 months later. And my cousin came back and said, we were talking about a couple years down the road. Um, Now it's 3 months. Are you still interested? And we said
Mm,
yes. And so the foundation was able to acquire that property. And my wife said, I think we ought to name it Leah's Gathering Place. And so it's a modest little house. But that's where my wife has her Leah's Cookie Bite Bake Shop. And my wife, like I had mentioned early on, we both have full time jobs. And, but she does beautifully decorated iced sugar cookies. And that's where she has her shop. And she's more or less open like the week before holidays. And then she takes private orders as well. And every single penny of the money that she makes goes back into the foundation. And
that's
I would
awesome.
highly recommend people go to Leah's Cookie Bite Bake Shop on Facebook and just look at her beautiful creations. And that's also where we have life skill workshops for women in recovery, some educational, some fun things, um, like a Pamper Her, where we bring in ladies in recovery, and my wife will bring in hairstylists and
Wow.
cosmetologists, and for about 3 hours, they get a shampoo, a haircut, a hairstyle, and they just rotate to the different stations. So the cosmetologist, will do the facials and the silk hands, and then we bring in a masseuse, and they'll do a
Wow.
back and neck massage, and then like maybe some of the educational things is how to reclaim your credit, banking 101. Those are just some of the things that we've done.
That's
And
awesome.
every one of those workshops will end with a meal. Again, something that we take for granted, but it's a home cooked meal,
Yeah.
And the one lady, the one year, we were out picking up the ladies in recovery to bring them over. And she said, Mr. Mike, she said, where do you get take? This was on Thanksgiving Day. She said, where do you get takeout on Thanksgiving? And I said, takeout? I said, we're not having takeout. I said, we're about to experience a home cooked meal. And she said, are we having sweet potatoes? And I said, yes, we are having sweet potatoes. She said, I haven't had sweet potatoes since my grandma fixed those when I was a teenager.
Mm,
And I said, well, my mom has filled 5 pounds of sweet potatoes. And so you'll have plenty of opportunity. And so those are things that we do. And then just a couple months ago, we were blessed with a grant from the opioid settlement monies. And we were able to hire our first part time employee
wow.
um, who is a certified family recovery specialist. She's also a certified recovery specialist, but we wanted to get a certified family recovery specialist to, um, you know, talk and have some support services for the family. And she's
Can you
also
hold on? Can you say why? Because I think that's important.
well, yeah, because the family's left out in the cold. They don't know where to go.
Hmm.
And they just don't know where to turn. Just like Robin and I, when Leah was
Exactly.
battling addiction, where did we turn? And again, this was back in 2009, and such services did not exist. And
Yeah.
we were left to combat and try to deal with Leah's addiction. And quite frankly, we didn't know how to handle it because we were so naive, and there just weren't services available.
Yeah.
And so Sarah has 4 years of recovery herself, and she's a certified family recovery specialist. And now we offer a bevy of services. So Leah's Gathering Place has really turned into a hub resource
That's
for the lower part of the county. And like I said, she's now 5.5 months into this, and so now we're offering services for women, men and women that may be in active addiction, and we will do the warm handoff and try to get them in the right treatment area, whether it's inpatient or outpatient. Folks that are in recovery, offering services for those folks, list of meetings and other things that they may need, or they're exploring. And then those families that are grieving. We're
mm,
just in the infancy of that as far as offering some grieving support services. So
it's growing.
it really is. It really is, Linda. And from that simple bag, from that card to the bag to the operation center to now the Gathering Place, which is now a hub resource center, we've been blessed. And someone said to me one time, well, how can you say you're blessed because you've lost your daughter? Well, we've been blessed because, we've taken our misery, and turned it into mission. And look, not everyone can start a foundation. I get that. And not everyone wants to start a foundation. And I get that. But at the same time, we had a choice. We came to a crossroads
Mhm.
when with Leah's passing. And it was like, we want to do something to honor our daughter while helping others. And, are we just going to sit and twiddle our thumbs, or what do we do? And at that point, we didn't know what we were going to
Right.
do, but
Yeah.
it came to us. And there's
Yeah.
so many ways that you can honor your loved one.
Oh, yeah.
And, so we decided to do that, and we decided to be proactive. And, through God's blessing, we were able to do that. And, we continue to do that.
Yeah.
And I dare not let out Chris, because we wanted to do something in his memory as well. And like I had said early on, he was a tremendous welder. And so we went to the vote. I said to Robin, actually, one of the days that we were sitting by his bedside in Winchester Medical Center, I said, Robin, I don't know if this is the proper time or not, but I said, I just want to run something by you. I said, our son was a tremendous welder, and let's do something to help others, like we're doing with helping others with Leah's legacy. And she said, well, Mike, what are you thinking? We can't start another foundation. I said, no, no. I said, you're right. But I said, let's reach out to the VOTEC and talk to the welding instructor and see if we could offer a stipend to a graduating senior who's entering the workforce, and offer a stipend and let the welding teacher select that person. And then we offer the stipend in Chris's memory, um, to help with apparel or to help with equipment that they may need to get them started. And we've done that now for the last 3 years.
That's
And
awesome.
that's what we're doing, because when Chris graduated, he entered the workforce. And I know that welding equipment and apparel, it's
It's
expensive.
costly.
I
Yeah.
mean, every winter, every Christmas time, we would get our son a pair of welding shoes, and they at the time
Mm,
was they were $125 a piece.
wow.
He had 3 or 4 different welding helmets, and those welding helmets, some of those helmets cost over $300.
Gosh, I wouldn't even have realized that. I would think that
Yeah,
you go to work, they give that to you, but not your shoes. And yeah, that's a
yeah,
great way to honor
yeah.
him. Was he involved with Leah's legacy?
Very little,
Okay.
very little. I mean, he offered support, but I just think that he sort of stayed to the side because that was our ballywick, and
Mm-hmm.
that was our way of honoring our daughter. So no, he wasn't involved in that, but
Okay.
he knew that we were doing it, obviously,
Yeah.
and so now that's those are really the two endeavors that we're doing, and we just continue to plug away.
Yeah. Yeah. So you have found, like I said, purpose in your pain. You found a reason to get up. And guess what? It sounded like God wasn't letting you sleep anyway, because at 3 a.m. he was like, I got a
Correct.
message for you.
Correct.
Right.
Right.
And but one thing that I want you to hear is that you heard it, you were open to it, and you listened and you followed that, even if it didn't make sense, even if it was painful, even if it, yeah, it was difficult. You listened. And when you listen, it's not only helping you and giving you a sense of purpose and helping you heal, but a lot of times it makes it a little bit easier. Things just happen because you're following what God's telling you to do. He's going to open those doors for you. He's going to provide even when you're like, this makes no sense. I mean, you used many examples of that in your story.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I appreciate that you're doing that. And I just wanted to point that out. That's a strength that you have and your wife. I know I haven't met her, but I've heard about her. Um, so as we're like wrapping up, I'm wondering, what has grief taught you about life or about yourself?
It can destroy you if you let it,
Mm,
but we did not. And when I say we, and I mean that intentionally, plural. We did not let it.
mm-hmm.
My wife and I, we've walked hand in hand.
Yeah.
We've walked hand in hand through this journey, and we could have very easily thrown our hands up many, many times, but we didn't. And for that, we're better for it. We miss our children dearly, and every day, um, there's that grief. You just don't wake up. I mean, you've referenced it, many times. You just don't wake up one day and say, "Well, that part of my life is over with." Grief is not the absence of love. Grief is there's proof that the love is still there. That's why we
Mm-hmm.
grieve, and we will always feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
And we've, like I said, we've taken our grief and channeled it in a positive way to help others, and that's been our main impetus, from the very beginning, to help others.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. I love how you shared that. And I noticed you were getting emotional. Was there anything that, because it was right around when you said, like, we walked hand in hand. What did that bring up for you?
Um,
You don't have to answer that.
no, we could have very easily thrown in the towel, but we didn't. And our love is stronger today, more so than it's ever been.
Yeah.
And she's a wonderful mate, and like I said, she's my best friend, and we just work so well together as a team, and we always have. But when this thing of grief came around, And then we established the foundation. And then with, Chris's Memorial Award, she's a graphic artist, and, she has her strong points and I have my strong points, and we just mesh.
Yeah.
And for that, I'm grateful.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And you know what? You two didn't try to change each other, even though you were like, I'm not liking that she's gone and I'm here by myself. You talked about it, but you also each found your way to let this grief out, to find ways to and cope, I guess, for lack of better words, and like in a way to honor. But at the same time, you were doing it together, and it was pulling together something so beautiful. So that's something hopefully people hear is like, yeah, you can do things different, grieve differently, but you can bring it together.
Yeah.
And it can make something beautiful.
Yeah.
So if someone's listening and they only take one thing, they remember one thing from this conversation, what would you hope it would be?
I will leave you all with 2 words, and those are the words that my son shared with me time and time again, whether we were coming or going. And he'd say, "Dad, stay real."
Okay. Stay real. I like it. So do you still use that? Do you say that to people?
Absolutely. And I wear it on my wrist. I've got my overdose awareness band. I've got She's Somebody's Daughter. And I've got
Stay real.
Stay Real.
Wow.
Never forget me. Stay real.
Oh, wow. I love that. Okay. So if people want to get in touch with you and want to connect with you and learn more about Leah's legacy, is there somewhere they can connect with you? Where would you like them to go?
Yeah, they can go to leahslegacy.net as a starter. And my information is on there. My phone number is on there. My email is on there. But that would, just drive them to the website, leahslegacy.net.
Perfect. And I'm going to have all that in the description. So,
Okay.
But I just wanted to say,
Yeah.
See where you wanted them to go. So I just thank you so much for being vulnerable and for your strength in sharing. And thank you and your wife for all that you're doing for those that are out there that, are being blessed by what you are sharing with them. And you're sharing your daughter and your son's story in different ways, but you're continuing their legacy. And I really appreciate that. And I want to encourage those that are listening to check out Leah's legacy and definitely think about the cookies for holidays because they sound like that would be really, really good. Anything else you would like to say before we kind of wrap up?
We're mending piece by piece.
We are mending piece by piece. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And that to say, kind of close with that is that, and if people are looking for more resources through the Mending Piece by Piece community, they can sign up for the newsletter or check out the books. Everything will be in the description below. So
thank you.
Jeff, yes, thank you again for sharing your story and all that you do.
Appreciate it. God bless.
Thank you for listening to the Mending Piece by Piece podcast. If you lost a loved one and would like additional grief resource to help navigate you through your grief journey, you could purchase Mending Piece by Piece After Suicide Loss, Guided Grief Workbook and Journal to Heal the Survivor's Heart, or Mending Piece by Piece, a workbook and journal for navigating grief with hope on both Amazon and Barnes & Noble. And until next time, continue mending piece by piece, healing through grief, one step at a time.